Good evening.
You know how wonderful it is. We're going to gather tonight to get the Rule of Christ training, and I have the privilege of kind of hanging out in the back. So those of you who served as ushers, and you hang out towards the back of the sanctuary, I'm privileged to do that tonight. It really is an honor of mine to welcome Reverend Tom Badler to lead us in the Rule of Christ training. The Rule of Christ training was starting to roll out about 3 years ago as an initiative of our bishop, who really wants every church to have access to a training that equips us to know how to think through and how to handle any little issues or any little conflicts that kind of arise. Because one of the goals of churches is not to shy away from or avoid conflict, but to know exactly how to handle it when it happens. All of us gather as a family. I mean, as a church, in any church family, whenever you have more than one person involved, there's inevitably going to be a time where we have slight disagreements. I know it's a shock. But the truth is, there is a way for us in the church to think through about the ways in which we lovingly address and lovingly work with one another. So Tom Badler, the Reverend Tom Badler, is one of the most incredible people. He is truly a mentor to many clergy across the Annual Conference. He recently retired, and he has, 48, 9 years of experience. He's been doing this so long. He knows how to handle and work with churches like nobody's business. And so, when I was first appointed here, that triggers the system for the bishop and the cabinet to send out somebody to train us for the Rule of Christ. And he was the person recommended to us by the assistant to the bishop. So as soon as I saw him, I ran up to him and I said, Reverend Badler, would you be willing to come to New Lenox and train us? So I set the stage just asking you to extend your warmest welcome and the greatest of invitations, the warmest hospitality, Reverend Tom Badler, as he leads us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Babler, B-A-B-L-E-R. We just had a cousins reunion. The Babler cousins were from Switzerland. Our ancestors from Glarus, Switzerland, by way of New Glarus, Wisconsin. Have any of you been to New Glarus? You know New Glarus. Do you like cheese? I grew up in a Swiss home. We ate cheese breakfast, lunch, and we didn't call it lunch. Breakfast, dinner, and supper. We ate cheese 3 times a day. So anyhow, I just came from New Glarus, remembering who I was. Ulrich Zwingli, in 10 days from now, 31st, so it'd be 7 days from tonight, Martin Luther put the 95 Theses on the church door 500 years ago, exactly 500 years. This is the 500th year, so somebody will be singing Mighty Fortress is Our God around here, probably, maybe not. But that was part of the Reformation, and the Radical Reformation, it's called, was Zwingli. And then he was killed, and then it went some other directions. But I come from the Zwingli side, and his first parish when he was 20 years old was Glarus, Switzerland. A 20-year-old young priest was sent up the mountain from Zurich to Glarus. That's where my ancestors were. So I was trying to dream of my ancestors knew Zwingli, and Zwingli was the priest to my great. But anyhow, it's B-A-B-L-E-R. And sometimes people put another B in, Kate said. And so there's that text in Acts where Paul was arguing with the philosophers in Athens, and they got tired of him. They saw him coming up the hill one of the later days. You remember that text in the 17th chapter? And they looked down and they said, here he comes. What has this babbler come to say? And so some of you have asked that tonight. I'm connected with Pastor Matthew. I was privileged to be a mentor and a partner with Matthew at Garrett Evangelical. And Wesley and I connected most recently, Wes, at Walk to Emmaus. When I walked down that hall, it was an amazing experience. And Wesley's face was one of the faces that greeted me and was praying for me and guiding me that night. But glad to be here. This is my first time. When I came in August to meet with Kate and Matthew and Wesley, it was my first time on the grounds. And yet I felt like I'd been here. And the reason being is because I'm a farm boy from Northwest Illinois, and I went to camp meeting. I was born in February, and my folks took me to camp meeting, Oakdale Church Camp, Evangelical Association in those days. Have you been to Oakdale? Yeah. So we were together at Oakdale. And so that my faith is rooted and my call to ministry and the formation of my faith is on the campground. So when I came to the old campground here in August and again tonight, and then I saw your outdoor worship, I said I felt like I was at home. I was here for the first time, but I felt like I was at home. And so good to be at home at New Lenox. Every Sunday morning I sit in the pews now at First UMC Downers Grove, and my pastors are Greta and her husband. And so we're in worship and connected with New Lenox through Jim and Greta on Sunday mornings. Grateful for these connections and this opportunity. This is something for Wesley to be in the back row, me to be in the front row. Usually I'm sitting in the pews these days, and your pastor is a Rule of Christ trainer, so I'm in a special place, and one of my partners and mentors is in the house and working together. 40 years I served churches in Northern Illinois and retired 5 years ago. And so I said, and I shared that morning when we had that meeting, I said, I'm in my 5th year of retirement, and it's really a new life, a different life. And I said, I feel like a kindergartner in retirement. And Kate, did I remember right? You said you have a kindergartner in your house, and she said, well, I've been teaching my kindergartner to sit still and get in line and wait your turn, and don't keep your hands to yourself, don't push and don't bite. And I said, that's what I'm working on at this stage. In a new chapter of my life, it's like I'm working on the same things. I related, I think, your son, right? I'm connected with your son in kindergarten, trying to pick up a new journey and start in new ways. And one of the commitments that I've made is to be a trainer in the Rule of Christ. And glad to share this tonight and to share the rule and then walk around it together with you and see how do we hear it and how do we practice it. As Wesley said, one of the triggers, what triggers this from our bishop's office, she carried it all over the Minnesota Annual Conference, the Rule of Christ. So if you go to Minnesota Church and ask people, they said, yes, Bishop Sally was here and we know about the Rule of Christ. And so she brought it here. When a new pastor is appointed, Matthew 2 years ago and Wesley this past year, it's a trigger. It sets vibrations. Whenever there's changes in the body, then there's sometimes stress and issues. And so the bishop says, let's go in the midst of those changes and lift up the Rule of Christ so that we have a guide, we have a rule to guide us in our life together at a time when the pressure's up a bit, possibly, or the tensions, or changes are hard. And so when change comes, we have feelings, and when we have feelings, sometimes we have differences and issues. And so that's what brings me here and brings the bishop's blessing and encouragement and gift from her office for us to enter into the Rule of Christ. When we think about the rule, our first thing is it's something we've got to do, something we should practice. And so Wesley used those words, it's a way of living, and I want to get back to that. But what I'm learning about the rule is it requires a lot of listening, to practice the Rule of Christ. We have to listen. So I'd like to invite us to listen. And Karen's going to be our reader in just a bit. The text is Romans. I think you have the sheet there on the other side of the fundamentals sheet. Flip over that sheet that says fundamentals, assumptions. It shows Romans chapter 12. And I want to talk tonight about being a Romans 12 church and being a Matthew 18 church. And so Romans 12 is a piece of it. And so in a bit, Karen will read this, but first I'd like to invite us to pray. Lord Jesus, come among us this night in this gathering. Touch our ears that we may hear. Touch our eyes that we may see. Touch our hearts that we may receive the word you have for us this day. In your holy name. Amen.
Let love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in suffering. Persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints. Extend hospitality to strangers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," says the Lord. No, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
Amen. Hold this before you for just another minute and look at the words you just heard. And I'm asking, what grabs your attention tonight? What word or phrase, what reaches out? What clicks with you tonight when you listen to and look at these words? Tonight, what did you hear? A word or a phrase from this Romans text? Persevere. Let love be genuine. Live peaceably with all. I'm sorry? Bless those who persecute you. Hospitality. Does it say extend? Hospitality. Appreciated your welcome tonight, your greetings as I walked in as a stranger here. Yeah, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Yeah, the last word, overcome evil with good. The rule of Christ is about becoming a Romans 12 church. And so we start thinking, how would this mood, how would this spirit be afoot in this congregation in this passage from Romans 12 that we've read. Turn the page over. Listen to these words. How we live together is as important as what we do together. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. If an organization or relationship is stuck, it can often be traced back to a crucial conversation we are not having or not having well. In our current culture of sound bites, partisan politics, and social media, having respectful conversation is not the norm, and something the church could teach the world if we actually become a Matthew 18 and Romans 12 church. When people visit your church, they usually decide within the first 10 minutes whether to return. Visitors sense the group's personality and intuitively know whether they wish to connect with you. What, if anything, of these words that I just read gets your attention tonight? Where do you hear truth, or where is your attention grabbed here? Yeah. 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 How do you say? How do they intuitively know? It's a spirit. You know, when you read in the Revelation, in the book of Revelations, in those early chapters, it talks about the spirit of the churches, the spirit of the church of Laodicea, the spirit of the church of each of the church. It talks about a spirit of the church. And that spirit, just to think that every church has a spirit. And in the Revelation, it's talking about a spirit of and a spirit over, but at this point, intuitively sensing this spirit and knowing the spirit of the church. It says, visitor sense. Someone else, what grabs your attention here?
Having a respectful conversation is not the norm.
Yeah, not the norm. A respectful conversation is not the norm. It seems that what sells advertising on sports talk and on political talk is not, is the norm. The norm is disrespect and caustic. I mean, that's, just think, somebody pays to listen to, someone pays to provide that. Someone's sponsoring that and say, this is what people want. This is what people will buy. And this is, if we sponsor this, then they will buy our product. Think of that. On sports radio or talk radio or political talk radio. And your words were, respectful conversation is not the norm. And so when we talk about the spirit of the church and the spirit of New Lenox United Methodist Church, we talk about how we relate to the norm. How are we a part of the norm, or how are we counter the norm? And that's something that I want us to come back to again and again tonight. Who's going with the flow, and who stands up and says, no, here's another way. What got your attention here? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Did you hear those words? A crucial conversation we are not having. And if you're not having it, what are you doing? And Wesley, you talked about the kind of spirit it takes to talk to each other in all kinds of circumstances. A crucial conversation we are not having. And so we want to talk about Matthew 18 and Romans 12. What would be the counter? What would be the alternative to that? Yes. Yeah. 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 How we live as important, or sometimes more important, than what we do. And so sometimes we talk about the ministry of the church, we talk about the ministry of doing. What has New Lenox done? What are we doing? What do we plan to do? What are our goals, our action goals? And we're reminded it's not just what we're doing, but who we are. I have a good friend, he's passed away, one of my first peers, one of my first college friends who's my age who's passed away. And I remember when he retired, he said, people would come up and say, Mr. Mashman, what are you going to do when you retire? And he would just get so riled up and so upset about that. He said, don't ask me. He said, what I'm going to do, the question is, what will I be? He said, what I want to think about is, what will I be? Who am I? What will I be? And so this is the point about not just New Lenox doing, but New Lenox being, New Lenox living. Thank you. Any other point that caught your attention? Turn to page in the handout that has the blue cover on it, the Rule of Christ for the Church. Turn to Sally's story, page 9. Let me tell you a story about an imaginary church. Yeah, page 9 on the blue folder. An application of the Rule of Christ. Sally Foster had never really liked the new youth director, Adam. But when her daughter came home from the spring retreat, very depressed, Sally decided it was time to do something about it. She wanted to make sure, however, that she was not the only person feeling this way, and so she decided to first visit Marnie Holstrom's mother, Vicki, and see if she felt the same way. As Sally talked with Vicki, she did not notice that as Sally talked with Vicki, she did not notice that Vicki was largely silent. But when Sally asked, "Don't you agree that something should be done?" Vicki said yes.